It is exactly 10 o'clock, so we can go ahead and get started. I'm excited to welcome you guys to the 5th Annual NMP Symposium. We're super excited to be able to bring you these presentations all for free, and that is thanks to the Eric P. Newman Numismatic Education Society. So we want to thank them, give them credit for allowing us to bring these presentations to you for the 5th NMP Symposium. So I will go over a few housekeeping things before I introduce our speaker for the hour. You will find a Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to drop them in there. You can leave your name or mark it as anonymous. I'll be doing them all as anonymous. I will not share your name when we ask the question at the end, but there will be a Q&A time at the end. So make sure you're putting questions in there as you think of them. And also recordings. We are recording this meeting and we will be posting them on our website roughly 2 weeks after the NMP Symposium. This is the second day of presentations. So we had a great day, a lot of good presentations yesterday, high attendance. So we expect the same out of today, some really interesting presentations. So we hope that you join into a few more presentations today and then some more tomorrow on Saturday. Without further ado, I will introduce our speaker for the hour. We have with us Mike Markowitz. He is an active member of the Ancient Numismatists Society of Washington, D.C., and he also writes for Coin Week Online. He'll be talking about coinage of the Byzantine Empire and Constantine VII. So Mike, if you want to, yep, awesome. And I will let you take it away.
Thank you very much, Andy. Following the collapse of the Roman Empire in the West in the 5th century, the eastern half of the empire, with its capital at Constantinople, today Istanbul, Turkey, endured for almost another 1,000 years. The people who lived in that empire did not call themselves Byzantine. That was a term coined in the 17th century by Western European scholars who greatly admired the Western Roman Empire, but held the Eastern Roman Empire in low regard. In preparation for this talk, I looked up some of the dictionary definitions of the term Byzantine. Of a system or situation excessively complicated and typically involving a great deal of administrative detail, or relating to or characterized by a devious and usually surreptitious manner of operation. For example, a Byzantine power struggle, or resembling the government or politics of the Byzantine Empire in structure, spirit, etc., specifically characterized by complexity, deviousness, intrigue, etc. The 4th Byzantine emperor of the Macedonian dynasty, Constantine VII, is remembered as Porphyrogenitus, meaning born in the purple. This term applied to rulers who were born while their fathers held the throne. The palace in Constantinople had a special purple chamber where empresses gave birth. The walls were lined with slabs of porphyry, a prized reddish purple marble that was quarried in Egypt. Constantine's father, Leo VI, who is remembered as Leo the Wise, ruled from 886 to 912. Many rulers in history are remembered as the Great. Frederick the Great, Constantine the Great, Alexander the Great, Catherine the Great. But surprisingly few rulers in history are remembered as the Wise. The only ones I can think of are Leo VI, Charles V of France, Charles Le Sage, and Alfonso X of Spain, Alfonso el Sabio. Many greats, not so many wises. Well, Leo the Wise had terrible luck, like English King Henry VIII, in his efforts to father a male heir. 3 of his successive wives died without delivering a son. His mistress, Zoe Carbonopsina, Byzantines did not generally use family names and often went by nicknames. Carbonopsina means she of the coal black eyes, bore Constantine on May 17th, 905. Now, the Orthodox Church disapproved of 3rd marriages and absolutely prohibited 4th marriages. So, defying the church, which was a dangerous thing for an emperor to do, Leo married Zoe on January 9th, 906, making her his empress. Young Constantine, the only son of Leo, was officially crowned as co-emperor at the age of 2. His constitution was sickly, and he was indeed invalid throughout his life. His father's birth was doubtful, and he was himself born out of regular wedlock, although his legitimacy was afterwards grudgingly recognized. From his 8th to his 16th year, he was the pawn by turns of his malignant uncle Alexander, of his mother, Zoe, of the patriarch Nicholas, and of the Lord Admiral Romanos Lekapenos. It was not until January of the year 945, at the age of nearly 40, that with the aid of a clique of guards officers devoted to his house, he was able to expel the Lekapenid usurpers and seat himself in sole majesty on the throne that was rightfully his. This is from the introduction of the English translation of one of the books that Constantine wrote, a book called De Administrando Imperio, on administering the empire, published by Dumbarton Oaks in 1967. The Macedonian dynasty begins with a murder. The Emperor Michael III, who is remembered as Michael the Drunkard, somewhat unfairly perhaps, had befriended a man named Basil, who was famous for his physical strength. He was a great wrestler, and he became the emperor's drinking buddy. And in fact, the emperor had him marry the emperor's mistress, Eudokia. Leo VI, Leo the Wise, was probably fathered by Basil I, but there was always a suspicion that he was actually fathered by Michael III. Leo proved to be an extremely effective ruler, but he only had that one son, Constantine VII. Constantine's first appearance on a coin. Oh, here is a snapshot of the boundaries of the empire about the time that Constantine VII was born. You can see that the empire is clinging to a foothold in southern Italy. The last town they controlled in Sicily, Taormina, was conquered by the Arabs coming across from North Africa in 902. The core of the empire was Anatolia, which is now the country of Turkey, most of Greece and the islands of the Aegean. They held Cyprus, and they held a narrow strip across the Black Sea in what is now Crimea. The two great rivals to the power of the empire were the Muslim Abbasid Caliphate to the south and the east, and to the west, the Kingdom of Bulgaria, the First Bulgarian Empire, which extended its rule over much of the Balkans at that time. Here's Constantine's first appearance on a coin. Alongside his father, Leo the Wise, which dates to the time of his coronation, or a little bit after. This coin was struck between 908 and 912. On the reverse, you see the infant boy depicted rather hopefully as a beardless adolescent, only slightly smaller than his father. They stand in imperial costume, holding the double-barred patriarchal cross between them. The great American numismatist Wayne Sales describes this coin as a masterpiece. He says, the care with which this die was engraved is exceptional. The composition is balanced with perfect symmetry, and the inscription is carefully placed and executed. On the obverse or head side, we see Christ enthroned with the Latin inscription, Jesus Christ, King of those who reign, Rex Regnantium. This design and inscription had been used on the gold coinage since the reign of Constantine's grandfather, Basil I. On the other side, right, the inscription is Leon et Constantine aug Rome, Leo and Constantine, emperors of the Romans. Notice, although the empire spoke Greek, the coin inscriptions are in Latin because of the prestige of the Latin language. That's why on contemporary circulating American coins, we still have the Latin inscription, a pluribus unum, out of many one, the motto of the United States. Latin retains a lot of prestige. This is a fairly rare coin. You can see this went for $10,000 in a 2022 auction. I have in my own collection another example of this that isn't quite as sharp. When Leo died, his dissolute brother Alexander took the throne, pushing young Constantine aside and exiling his mother Zoe to a convent. Alexander died after a year from excessive eating and drinking, and the coinage of his very brief reign are extremely rare. As regent for her young son, Zoe had these coins struck with her portrait alongside the son. You'll notice that on the reverse of this coin, Zoe is wearing the loros, an elaborate jeweled and embroidered wraparound garment that was reserved for members of the imperial family. Whereas young Constantine is wearing a pleated robe, or called chlamys, which was somewhat less prestigious than the loros. He's shown a little bit smaller than his mother. And you'll notice on the shaft of that processional cross, Constantine's hand is below that of his mother. Zoe is wearing a heavy crown, and that's not a wig, that is strings of pearls dangled down from the crown, called pendilia. In the inscription, the name of Constantine does appear first. Constantine and Zoe in Christ, emperors of the Romans. This is one of the rarest coins of the entire reign of Constantine VII. But the mother and son appear together also on a far more affordable example, the humble copper pholis. The coinage system of the empire at this time was exceptionally simple. There were only 3 denominations, one each in gold, silver, and copper. The gold coin, solidus in Latin, histamenon in Greek, weighed about 4.5 grams. You can think of it as being like a $50 bill. It would be the price of a sheep, or possibly even a cow. It was a month's salary for a foot soldier. The humble copper pholis was the price of a loaf of bread. And the only intermediate denomination, the milioresion in silver, a flat silver coin weighing about 2.5 to 3 grams, fell somewhere in between, about 12 to 14 exchanged for a gold coin. And for a silver coin, you could get 24 to 30 coppers. In the year 919, Romanos Lecapenus, the admiral of the fleet, staged a palace coup, and Zoe was packed off to the convent again, where she later died. Romanos had his daughter named Helena marry young Constantine, and he ruled as the emperor's father-in-law. In December 920, Romanos was crowned as co-emperor, and here he appears side by side with Constantine on the reverse of the gold solidus. They are both wearing the imperial lauros, but young Constantine, who is beardless, stands in the senior position on the right. His hand is above the hand of Romanos on the shaft of the cross. And Constantine's name comes first in the inscription. All these visual cues communicated important political messages to a Byzantine elite that was absolutely obsessed with protocol and ceremony and symbolism. A short time later, Romanos took the senior position on the coinage. Notice his hand is above the hand of Constantine. He's wearing the lauros, Constantine's wearing the chlamys, and the name Romanos appears first in the inscription. This is a very interesting coin because it has a great pedigree. It comes from the collection of William Herbert Hunt, a Texas oil man who, with his brother Nelson Bunker Hunt, assembled an enormously valuable coin collection. That was when the Hunt attempt to corner the silver market collapsed. Their collections were sold off by Sotheby's in an epic series of auctions in 1990 and 1991. The auction catalogs are still prized by collectors as reference books from those sales. So Romanos is in charge and Constantine has been sidelined. Romanos crowned his eldest son, Christopher, as co-emperor in the year 921. Christopher's date of birth is uncertain. He was born sometime between 890 and 895. And on a special issue that celebrates this event, we see half-length figures of Christopher and Constantine standing side by side on the reverse, holding the usual processional cross. On the obverse side, Romanos modestly shows himself being crowned by Jesus. And the inscription, which in this time is in Greek, not Latin, is Kyrie Boethe Romanos Despote. Lord, help Romanus the despot. Now, for Byzantines, the title despot did not necessarily imply that the ruler was a brutal tyrant, but it did clearly communicate that he was the boss. An exceptionally rare issue, dated to around 930, 931, bears the standing figure of Romanus there in the center, holding a scepter, wearing the lauros at full length, and flanked on either side by half-length figures in richly jeweled and embroidered garments that are not the lauros. And the inscription there is Romanus, Constantine, and Christopher, emperors of the Romans. This die is executed with great care. And this particular coin was in the collection of the famous Parisian coin dealer, Nadia Capomaggi, who lived from 1901 to 1978. And in a 2009 auction, this coin sold for $40,000. The dispute over precedence between Constantine and Christopher was solved by the introduction of this coin, which excludes Constantine from the gold coinage altogether. And these coins are extremely common. Dated to circa 924 to 931. This is one of the most affordable gold coins of the reign. You'll notice that the imperial figures on the reverse have peculiar triangular heads. It seems that the die engravers at the mint had lost the skill of creating realistic human portraits and were reduced to these cartoonish kind of stick figures. But they were still very careful to show, who's wearing the lauros, the high prestige garment, who's wearing the pleated chlamys, the less prestigious but still imperial outfit. In 924, Christopher's younger brothers, the sons of Romanos, Stephen and Constantine Lecapenus, were crowned as co-emperors by their father on Christmas Day. Christopher then died, probably at the age of about 35, sometime in 931. Now, Stephen and Constantine Lecapenus, the younger sons of Romanus, never have their names inscribed or in their images on the gold coinage, but on the silver miliaresion, there was enough room on the reverse, which commonly carried a 5-line inscription, to squeeze in Romanus, Constantine, Stephan, and Constantine in Christ, emperors of the Romans, with extensive use of abbreviation on the reverse. On the obverse side, the cross on steps, which was sort of the symbol of the denomination used on the silver coinage, has added to it a little medallion at the intersection of the cross that bears a portrait of Romanos, and the inscription around the cross, Jesus Christ conquers, which had been the standard inscription on the silver coinage for centuries. The two disgruntled sons of Romanos, Stephen and Constantine, staged a palace coup to depose their father on December 20th, 944. They forced him to become a monk and exiled him to a monastery on a remote island. Now, this was much more merciful than the usual treatment of deposed emperors, which involved either blinding and mutilation or decapitation, which was hard to come back from. A few weeks later, on January 27th in the year 945, Constantine, with the aid of loyal palace guards, staged a counter coup, and the rebellious sons joined their father in exile at the same monastery. But they kept all their body parts and lived happily ever after as monks. To celebrate his assumption of sole power, Constantine VII commissioned one of the most historic, important, and to us who collect these things, beautiful Byzantine gold coins. This is the coinage of his sole reign, beginning on 27 January 945. What we see here is a new portrait of Christ on the reverse. This is the image that's often described as Christ Pantocrator, Christ the ruler of all things, which, if you've ever been in an Orthodox church, right, this is the image that appears in the dome looking down, often in beautifully executed mosaic. And on the reverse, we see a realistic portrait, a portrait that has some character. Not a cartoonish image, not a stick figure, but an actual portrait. Extremely rare and of fine style. This example went for 25,000 Swiss francs against an estimate of 12,000 in a 2011 auction. It's one of the nicest examples to ever appear. And this coin harks back, or is a flashback to a coin that Constantine's father had issued that also bears his rather solemn, long-bearded portrait on the reverse. This is a very rare coin of Leo the Wise. The obverse, rather than a portrait of Christ, this is the first appearance of the Virgin Mary on a Byzantine coin, with her monogram, Greek monogram that abbreviates the words Mother of God, but above in Latin letters, just simply Maria. So with this coin, Constantine is referring back to the coinage of his father, but executing it with even greater artistic sensibility. For an affordable example of the coinage of Constantine alone, we have the humble copper follis, crudely executed, but here we see Constantine on the obverse, and the simple inscription on the reverse, Constantine in God, Emperor of the Romans, in 4 lines. So after more than 3 decades of being marginalized, Constantine VII is finally the sole ruler of the empire. In about 937, the only son of Constantine VII, named Romanus, ironically, after his maternal grandfather, at the age of 6 on Easter Day, April 6th, 945, he was crowned as co-emperor. And here we have another flashback, right? The father and the son together holding the cross between them. With the same, basically the same obverse image of Christ on that throne with curved arms on the back of the throne. It's called a lyre-backed throne. The name of young Romanos II also appears on the silver melioricion, once that he had been crowned as co-emperor. And this is a very interesting coin because this is the first appearance on any Byzantine inscription of the word Porphyrogenitus, abbreviated, the end of is cut off. But Constantine, born in the purple, and Romanus in Christ, faithful emperors of the Romans. That's the 5-line inscription on this silver coin, right? Issued sometime between 945 and 959. The word Porphyrogenitus, born in the purple, would appear many more times, abbreviated and garbled in many different ways on subsequent Byzantine coinage of emperors born while their fathers ruled. Constantine died on November 9th, 959, at the age of 54. There were rumors that he was poisoned by Theophano, the beautiful and ruthless wife of his son, Romanus II, but modern historians doubt this. As a man, Constantine VII was one of the best of the Byzantine emperors. He was a skilled musician, an artist of considerable merit, and he has left behind him the memory of a kindly and accomplished gentleman. His reign was free from any great disaster, and his gentle manners endeared him to his subjects. That was written by a great collector, Hugh Goodacre, in this book, A Handbook of the Coinage of the Byzantine Empire, a book that was very hard to find and which I treasure. Here's a timeline that summarizes the events that we've talked about this morning, from the birth of Constantine VII to his death, and the major events that are reflected in the coinage. Here are some of the references I consulted in putting this talk together. Of which the standard reference for Byzantine coinage is the monstrous 9-volume Dumbarton Oaks catalog. Dumbarton Oaks, in the hills behind Georgetown in Washington, D.C., belongs to Harvard University and is a world center for Byzantine studies, with a truly magnificent collection of Byzantine coins, most of which sadly is not on display. It's in the vault, but the entire Dumbarton Oaks catalog has been made available online as an essential reference for collectors and scholars. The book that most Byzantine coin collectors have by their bedside is Byzantine Coins and Their Values by David Sear, published in 1987 by by CB rather. And the prices are much out of date, but the information is still mostly quite good. The best introduction to this subject for beginners is the book by Wayne Sales, Ancient Coin Collecting, Volume 5, The Romaion Byzantine Culture. Romaion, right, is the Greek reading of Roman, what the Byzantines called themselves. In English, the standard and indeed like the only biography of Constantine VII is by the great British historian Arnold Toynbee, Constantine Porphyrogenitus and His World, a book of over 700 pages published by Oxford in 1973. And for a rattling good piece of historical storytelling, a book that can't be beat is the 3-volume History of Byzantium by John Julius Norwich. The years of Constantine VII are covered in the middle volume, Byzantium, the Apogee. And I'd like to read from that book a short passage. For Constantine, it must nevertheless have been a miserably unhappy childhood, shot through with uncertainty and fear. A father dead, a mother branded as a concubine and twice exiled, he himself facing constant accusations of bastardy and forced to accept in silence the gradual removal of everyone in whom he could put his trust. All this would have been bad enough for a sickly, sensitive boy, without finding himself alone, unwanted, and unloved amid a huge and fundamentally hostile family. A marriage of convenience at the age of 13 to a member of that family, a girl whom he hardly knew, can hardly have improved matters. But it is only fair to point out that marriage was to prove a surprisingly happy one. Be that as it may, there can be little doubt that the young emperor passed his adolescence in desperate loneliness and very largely ignored. Fortunately for him, his physical weakness was offset by an unusually lively mind and a wide range of artistic and intellectual interests. He seems to have been a talented painter. He was fascinated by everything he could discover about the great world that lay beyond the immediate confines of the capital and even the empire. And he would spend hours and days at a time studying the intricacies of Byzantine court ceremonial, the one subject which his position, intolerable as it was, gave him limitless opportunity to observe, and on which his exhaustive survey, De Ceremoniis, remains our most valuable authority. With that, I'll be happy to entertain your questions.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mike. I found that really interesting. All the small things that you mentioned on Coinage, the different clothing they were wearing, the different, who was holding the stick higher, all that stuff is really interesting. I thought it was, yeah, to show the little differences that they would have understood at the time. So I thought it was very interesting. So thank you for a great presentation. And we do what?
This image, by the way, is a damaged ivory panel that survives in a museum in Moscow, the Pushkin Museum. And it's considered the best lifetime portrait of Constantine VII. And you can see how closely this portrait resembles his sole reign, Solidus. It could almost have been executed by the same engraver. With that, I'm ready for questions.
Awesome. Yeah. If you want to go ahead and stop your screen share, just so they can see you nice and big for questions. Awesome. And we do have several in here already. So if any of you guys have more questions, now is the time to put them in the Q&A. First one, how would or should someone go about collecting Constantine VII coinage?
Well, assembling a complete collection of Constantine VII would be a challenge for a very patient collector with extremely deep pockets. There are 11 main types in gold, 6 in silver, and 5 in copper. The key issues for the series are the very rare solidi of Constantine and Zoe from the very beginning of the reign, the mother and son, and the very rare sole reign solidus with that magnificent long bearded portrait. A few coins of Constantine VII appear in every major auction of ancient coins. The rarities appear maybe once every 5 or 10 years in a major sale. But the best advice I ever got as a numismatist was buy fewer but better coins first. Buy the book before you buy the coin, and deal only with reputable dealers. Fake Byzantine coins are not especially dangerous for anybody with experience handling or seeing the real coins. The fakes really stick out like sore thumbs. But for a beginner, the safest course is to deal only with reputable dealers, members of the Professional Numismatists Guild, which has a strict code of professional ethics. So yeah, that's how you'd go about it.
Okay, awesome.
I hope that's responsive to the question.
Yeah, sounded like it to me. We have 2 questions that are the same. What got you interested in this series or topic?
In high school, I had 5 years of Latin, and I had the benefit of a truly brilliant and inspirational Latin teacher, Mrs. Seligson, whose memory I revere. And she left all of us who studied with her with an abiding love of the ancient world and a desire to understand it better. In college, I took a course called the Byzantine Imperial City, which was about Constantinople and its history. In one of life's cruel jokes, I've never gotten to actually see there, but it's on my bucket list to someday get to Istanbul and to see all those places that I've studied and learned about over the years. About 25 years ago, I discovered that Byzantine gold coins were remarkably undervalued at the time in terms of how much history you could hold in your hand for a few $100s. This is no longer the case. These coins, have found a much wider audience for a period, Russian oligarchs were buying up all the great Byzantine rarities because, of course, for Russians and indeed for all the Orthodox Slavic people, the Byzantine Empire is an important part of their history and heritage. Yes, and this is a subject that over the years has been very good to me. I like to say that in classical numismatics, you come for the coins, but you'll stay for the people, because you meet people who are incredibly generous about sharing their hard-won knowledge. We have a small group called the Association of Dedicated Byzantine Collectors, the ADBC, which meets once a year at the New York International Numismatic Show.
Awesome. Very, very cool. It looks like we have 2 more in here so far. So if anybody else has stuff, pop them in there and we'll get to them shortly. And one of them is, where's the best place to buy Byzantine coins?
Can I actually recommend particular vendors? The Harlan J. Burke in Chicago handles some of the best Byzantine coins that come on the market. Burke, many years ago, wrote a book on Byzantine gold coins. His book on 100 greatest ancient coins is one that I often recommend. Classical Numismatics Group, CNG, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Often Byzantine coins appear in the sales of Heritage, an auction house located in Dallas, Texas. And the major European auction houses, right, handle Byzantine coins. A question often arises, well, where do these coins come from? Most ancient coins are found in hoards, right? They're not found in archaeological sites, because if you had a lot of money and there were no banks, so if you wanted to keep it safe, you put it in a clay pot and you buried it as far away from people as you could conveniently get. Now, of course, if you ever came back to retrieve it as a result of plague, barbarian invasion, or some other mishap, those coins are still there in that clay pot under that tree, right? So hordes of coins are found by metal detectorists or by farmers in their fields. There is some illicit trade, right? We see a lot of Byzantine coins that were struck in Sicily that probably are recovered in illegal scuba dives off the waters around Italy and find their way onto the market. But no, these are not the coins that were taken off somebody's ancestors' eyes by grave robbers. The efforts by the archaeological lobby to criminalize the private ownership of antiquities are ill-considered and unwise. The best example of that is the United Kingdom, which is the only country in the world with sensible antiquities laws. The Portable Antiquities Scheme, it's called. Everything found in the ground that's ancient and precious metal must be reported, but the finder and the landowner are entitled to share the fair market value of that find. As a result of that sensible antiquities law, we know far more about the circulation of ancient coins in Britain than we do about the circulation of ancient coins anywhere else in the world. Sadly, the source countries for most Byzantine coins: Turkey, Syria, Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, Romania, and to some extent Italy, all have very strict antiquities laws, and in some cases even make metal detecting illegal. And that simply drives everything underground.
Yeah, so we can't learn anything about them because they just keep them. Interesting. Looks like we have one more question here. It says, it's a little off topic, but as a type collector of Byzantine coins, it seems one that I cannot get is one of the last of the empire from the Constantine XI era. Do you have any insight on the final era?
Yes, I do. The coins of Constantine the 11th, the last emperor at Constantinople, died on the walls of the city fighting during the final Turkish assault in May of the year 1453, are extremely rare because they are siege coins. They were struck on a silver plate. There was no circulating gold coinage by this point, that had been collected up from the altar vessels and silver, chalices and candlesticks of the churches in the city, hammered into flat sheets and struck into coins, cut apart into blanks with shears, and used to pay the mercenaries fighting on the walls and the workers who were trying desperately to repair the damage to the walls every night. So it was thought for many centuries that Constantine the 11th, who ruled from, 1448 to 1453, issued no coins at all till a small hoard of about 100 pieces in several different denominations turned up in Constantinople in the 1980s. As you might imagine, these coins are extremely rare, and as the last Byzantine coins, when they come on the market, they command fabulous prices. If you saw one lying in the street, you would not pick it up because it doesn't look like much. There is a crude stick figure of Christ on one side, a crude stick figure of the emperor on the other side, and a garbled inscription around the edges. Usually the inscription falls off the edge of the blank because the dies were too big for the blanks. So these are not beautiful coins, except perhaps in the eye of the beholder.
Very, very interesting. So that is the end of the Q&A. We don't have any more questions in there. So while I'm wrapping up, if anyone has any more questions, pop them in there quick and we can get them answered. But I just want to thank you, Mike, for volunteering your time and speaking to us. Super, super interesting presentation, a lot of history there. So I personally really enjoyed it, and I'm sure all the attendees did as well. And for all the
Follow
attendees,
my adventures on coinweek.com.
Okay, yeah, check out coinweek.com and see his articles and stuff. And so for all the attendees, we have presentations going the rest of the day and all day tomorrow. So we hope that we see you guys in some of the other presentations for the 5th NNP Symposium. So that wraps up the session.
Thank you.
Yep, goodbye.